Narrator in a steady, ominous tone. In the world of power, there is an unspoken truth that separates the rulers from the ruled, the feared from the forgotten. Disrespect is never a small wound. It is the first crack in the armor, the first tremor beneath a kingdom, the first whisper that the throne may not be as secure as it appears. Machiavelli would tell you that every act of disrespect, no matter how subtle, is a deliberate test. It is someone quietly asking themselves a dangerous question: can this person be pushed? And once that question is asked, others begin to ask it too. Power weakens not with a storm, but with a whisper, and that whisper always begins with disrespect. Watch closely, because what seems small to the untrained eye is a signal to the one who understands human nature. The person who interrupts you, mocks you, speaks over you, ignores your presence, or challenges you in front of others. They are not expressing opinion. They are measuring your reaction. They are mapping the boundaries of your tolerance. And if you respond with silence, if you brush it aside or pretend it means nothing, you have just given them their first victory. Machiavelli warns that once a ruler tolerates disrespect, he legitimizes it. He teaches others that it is safe to challenge him. Authority begins to evaporate, not because a more powerful enemy attacks, but because the ruler allowed the seeds of irreverence to grow. A leader who ignores disrespect thinks he is being wise, patient, or composed. But those who observe him, those who stand by and watch, rarely interpret it as wisdom. They see hesitation, they see doubt, they see a figure unsure whether he deserves the power he holds. People naturally test the limits of others, and when they discover that a boundary does not bite, they push harder. Machiavelli understood that humans are opportunistic. They do not seize power because they are courageous. They seize it because someone else shows weakness first. But here lies the deeper danger. Disrespect spreads. One act becomes an example for another. A single moment of weakness inspires more challenges. The enemy who first disrespects you may be insignificant, but those watching are not. They are the ones whose loyalty matters, whose obedience keeps the structure intact. When they witness someone undermine you without consequence, they begin reevaluating their own loyalty. They begin wondering if your leadership is temporary, and that quiet internal shift is far more dangerous than the initial insult. The true collapse of power begins not when your enemies attack, but when your allies stop believing you are strong enough to defend what is yours. Machiavelli often observed that respect is not a gift. It is a debt you force others to keep paying. And the moment you stop collecting, you declare your reign optional. The problem with modern thinking is simple. People believe they can ignore disrespect and still maintain control. They imagine themselves above petty conflict, but Machiavelli would laugh at such naivety. He would say that nothing is petty when it concerns power, reputation, or the perception of strength. To the people around you, every moment you stay silent becomes a chapter in the story of your decline. Now imagine this. Someone disrespects you publicly. They embarrass you, challenge you, or attempt to make you small. You stay quiet. You think you are choosing peace, maturity, or emotional discipline, but the room feels the shift instantly. They see the offender growing taller in their posture, more confident in their voice, and they see you shrinking, even if only by a fraction. That fraction is enough, because power is never lost all at once. It is given away inch by inch, and those inches slowly accumulate until suddenly you find yourself beneath the very people you once stood above. Disrespect is not about ego, it is about hierarchy. Humans, even in the most polished environments, follow the instincts of the ancient world. They look for the strongest figure. They look for the one who controls consequences. And if you become the person who absorbs disrespect without reaction, you lose the psychological dominance that keeps the structure in your favor. People stop fearing the loss of your approval. They stop valuing your presence. They stop recognizing your authority. And worst of all, they stop seeing you as someone who must be considered before decisions are made. Machiavelli wrote that once the perception of strength fades, restoring it becomes nearly impossible. A ruler who tolerates disrespect today will be overthrown tomorrow, not because he lacked intelligence or skill, but because he allowed someone to diminish him in the eyes of the collective. The crowd remembers humiliation far longer than they remember triumph. They remember the moments when a leader appeared small far more vividly than when he appeared great. And those memories shape how they behave in the future. This is why Machiavelli insists that disrespect can never be ignored. It is not the insult that matters, it is the signal behind it. Disrespect marks the beginning of someone's attempt to rewrite your position in the hierarchy. It is the first move in a quiet game of power where your silence becomes their strategy. And if you fail to recognize it, you become the architect of your own downfall, not through defeat, but through neglect. Narrator: calm, controlled, almost whispering. When a person disrespects you, the average mind reacts with fire. The untrained person raises their voice, confronts the offender, or becomes visibly shaken. But Machiavelli knew that nothing reveals vulnerability faster than an emotional reaction. The moment you respond in anger, you expose your inner world. You show that their words penetrated you. You tell them, without speaking, that they have leverage. And once someone knows they can provoke you, they will do it again. They will study your emotions, push your limits, and use your reactions to predict your behavior. A person ruled by anger is easy to control, easy to manipulate, and even easier to defeat. Machiavelli believed that the darkest and most effective response to disrespect is not loud, not visible, and certainly not emotional. It is calculated, delayed, and surgically precise. It begins with silence. When someone disrespects you and you respond with nothing, no flinch, no tone shift, no defensive posture. You deny them the satisfaction of seeing your pain. You refuse to validate their attack. This silence is not weakness. It is misdirection. They believe their disrespect landed without consequence, unaware that you have already begun planning the response. In the world of power, silence is not an absence of reaction. It is the beginning of strategy. Punishing indirectly means allowing the offender to walk away thinking they have won. This illusion is essential. When people believe they succeeded, they lower their guard. They stop thinking of you as a threat. And that is when the true punishment can unfold. A direct confrontation creates resistance. A delayed consequence creates confusion. The offender will not see the connection between their disrespect and the outcome that later unfolds in their life. They will attribute it to bad luck or circumstance, never realizing the hand guiding their misfortune was yours. Imagine this: someone insults you publicly. They undermine your intelligence, your credibility, or your authority. The emotional mind wants to strike back immediately, but Machiavelli would advise you to do the opposite. You observe, you memorize the moment, you walk away as if unaffected. A week later, 2 weeks later, perhaps even a month later, you expose a weakness of theirs through someone else. Or you remove an opportunity they rely on, or you redirect a connection they desperately need. The punishment arrives silently, without announcement, and without your fingerprints on it. They feel the sting, but they cannot trace its origin. This uncertainty is far more tormenting than a direct confrontation. A direct punishment ends the conflict. An indirect punishment makes them fear the shadows. Humans fear what they cannot explain. The moment someone realizes that crossing you leads to unpredictable consequences, they begin policing their own behavior around you. They think twice before speaking. They walk carefully around your presence. They become cautious, respectful, even submissive. This is the power Machiavelli understood, fear that emerges not from violence, but from uncertainty. When you punish emotionally, they know your limit. When you punish indirectly, they never know what your limit is or when they have crossed it. But to punish indirectly, you must master something even more important: emotional stillness. You must understand that reacting in the moment is a trap. Disrespect is an invitation, a bait. The offender wants to pull you into the arena where emotions rule the outcome. When you refuse, when you remain still, you rob them of their power. You become unpredictable, and unpredictability is the foundation of authority. It is not about revenge. Machiavelli never advocated for petty retaliation. He taught that every action must serve a purpose: to strengthen your position, to reinforce your reputation, to maintain your control. Punishing indirectly ensures that you never appear cruel or irrational. You appear calm, composed, even fair, while the consequences unfold quietly behind the scenes. This is the genius of indirect punishment. Publicly, you remain the reasonable one. Privately, you reshape the environment in a way that restricts your adversary's influence. You do not strike them. You weaken the ground they stand on. You do not shout at them. You make their voice irrelevant. You do not confront them. You make their position collapse without conflict. They are defeated without you ever lifting your voice. And here is the part most people never understand. When you punish someone directly, you teach them how to defend themselves against you. When you punish someone indirectly, you teach them that defense is impossible. They cannot anticipate your moves. They cannot calculate your motives. They cannot prepare for the consequences. And when people cannot prepare, they fear. That fear becomes the barrier that protects your power far more effectively than aggression or dominance ever could. Machiavelli believed that the ruler who controls his emotions controls the battlefield. The ruler who lets his enemy see his anger gives away the map of his weakness. Disrespect is not handled with fire. It is handled with ice. You allow the moment to pass, let the offender believe they have pierced you, and then later, when the world is distracted and the timing feels unrelated, you reshape their fate. You do it quietly, you do it efficiently, and you do it without ever speaking their name. Narrator measured, composed, quietly powerful, there is a certain kind of strength that does not roar, does not strike, and does not announce itself. It is the calmness of a ruler who already knows how the story ends. Machiavelli believed that this form of composure is the deadliest weapon a person can possess. When someone disrespects you, when they attempt to diminish you or stain your reputation, the instinct of the ordinary mind is to fight openly, to demand justice, to show that they will not tolerate such behavior, but this instinct, though natural, is a trap. It reveals your emotional state, your desire to be understood, your need to be seen as strong, and anything you need becomes something others can take away. Machiavelli understood that a ruler must appear calm even when planning the downfall of the one who disrespected him. This appearance is a shield, a disguise, and a strategic illusion. Your calmness convinces the world that you are not bothered, that the insult slid off you like water off marble. But beneath that stillness, the real work begins. The darkest way to handle disrespect is not through confrontation, but through dismantling the very foundation that gives your adversary confidence. And to do this effectively, you must appear harmless while acting in ways that reshape the battlefield. People rarely see betrayal when it comes from silence. They expect revenge to look like fury, explosive and direct. But the Machiavellian strategy is quieter and infinitely more devastating. You do not attack the person who disrespected you. You attack the structure that allows them to disrespect you in the first place. Every person who challenges you stands on something: a reputation, a network, a skill set, an illusion of superiority, a circle of supporters. They believe these pillars protect them. You weaken those pillars one by one without ever acknowledging the original insult. And this is where the calm appearance becomes critical. If you act aggressively, they will prepare. If you remain calm, they will never see the storm approaching. Imagine someone in your workplace, your social environment, or your inner circle tries to embarrass you, undermine you, or subtly disrespect your role. If you lash out, you validate their behavior. If you confront them, you elevate their importance. But if you appear calm, measured, and indifferent, you make them believe they misjudged your response. They relax, they stop watching you, and while they feel secure, you begin working in the shadows to break the position they stand on. Perhaps they rely on alliances. You weaken those alliances by deepening your own connections, not through gossip, but through strategic presence. Perhaps they rely on credibility. You quietly outperform them, expose their mistakes, or highlight their weaknesses through natural circumstances rather than direct accusation. Perhaps they rely on being seen as bold. You allow their boldness to push them into overconfidence, where they make errors that reveal their true nature. Each move is subtle, each shift invisible to the untrained eye, yet each one brings them closer to falling. Your calmness is not passivity, it is camouflage. It allows you to move freely, undetected, while controlling the narrative without speaking a word. Machiavelli believed that the most effective leaders were those who could maintain serenity on their face while working fiercely behind the scenes. They did not need the world to see their struggle. They needed only the world to see the outcome. Consider the power of this illusion. The one who disrespected you becomes increasingly bold, believing you are too timid or too weak to retaliate. Their arrogance becomes a tool you can use against them. People who underestimate you make mistakes. People who assume victory sabotage themselves. And when you remain calm, you feed their illusions. They cannot imagine you as a threat, so they never see the trap you set. Then the shift begins. Their allies distance themselves. Their influence weakens. Opportunities slip from their hands. Support they once took for granted begins to erode, not because you attacked them directly, but because you quietly maneuvered in ways that made their position unsustainable. They will not connect this fall to their disrespect. They will simply feel the ground disappearing beneath their feet. This is the essence of Machiavellian power. You do not fight your enemies. You remove the conditions that allow them to exist as enemies. You do not strike them down. You let their own structure collapse. You do not retaliate emotionally. You retaliate strategically. And throughout this entire process, you maintain the appearance of calm authority, as if the world naturally shifted in your favor. The brilliance of this approach lies in perception. To outsiders, you look rational, composed, above the chaos. To the offender, you look uninvolved, even harmless. And when the consequences finally reach them, you remain untouched, blameless, even sympathetic. The world sees you not as the cause of their downfall, but as the one who remained steady while they created their own ruin. Machiavelli teaches that true power is never loud. It is never emotional. It does not beg for recognition. True power is the quiet force that rearranges circumstances while everyone believes they are unfolding naturally. And when you appear calm while breaking their position, You embody that force in its purest form. Narrator slow, controlled, resonant with authority. Machiavelli understood that power is never about the moment, it is about the message. When someone disrespects you, the punishment is not solely for the offender. It is a demonstration for everyone who watched, everyone who listened, everyone who wondered whether they too could test you. A ruler who deals with an insult privately gains justice. A ruler who deals with an insult strategically gains obedience. The darkest way to handle disrespect is to ensure that the outcome becomes a lesson burned into the memory of everyone who might consider challenging you in the future. But here is where many people fail. They punish too openly, too aggressively, or too personally. They make it clear that revenge was their motive, and in doing so, they reveal insecurity. Machiavelli believed that any punishment born from emotion lacks the elegance required to maintain authority. The goal is not to appear vengeful. The goal is to appear inevitable. What happens to the offender must look like the natural consequence of their own decisions, not an act of retaliation. When people see you as someone who simply allows fate to unfold, they fear challenging you, because fate always seems to be on your side. To create this kind of lesson, you must master the art of timing. The punishment must never come immediately after the disrespect. If it does, the connection is obvious, and the message loses its power. When the consequence arrives much later, delivered by circumstance, redirected by influence, or shaped by the environment, it feels larger than you. It feels like destiny. This illusion is essential, because fear rooted in destiny is far stronger than fear rooted in anger. Imagine someone mocks you publicly, attempts to embarrass you, or tries to lower your standing. You stay calm. You remain composed. Days pass, weeks pass, then something shifts, their project collapses, their influence weakens. Their opportunities vanish, and the world connects the dots even if the offender does not. People watching begin to say, "He disrespected the wrong person." They begin to whisper, "There are consequences for crossing that line." And even though no one can prove your involvement, the rumor alone becomes a shield around your reputation. People fear what cannot be traced, what cannot be predicted, what cannot be controlled. This is the kind of fear Machiavelli valued, not fear of violence, but fear of outcomes. Not fear of your hands, but fear of your reach. When the punishment becomes a lesson, it extends beyond the offender and seeps into the minds of everyone around you. It creates a silent boundary that others instinctively respect. They may admire you, they may envy you, but above all, they know that disrespecting you is not a game they can play without cost. However, the lesson must also preserve your image. You must look patient, level, headed, and reasonable. The world must believe you did nothing more than continue living your life with discipline and focus. This duality is crucial. You appear serene, yet your presence shapes outcomes. You appear forgiving, yet people know forgiveness does not erase consequence. You appear gentle, yet those who cross you slowly disappear from influence. It is this contradiction that makes people both trust you and fear you at the same time. Machiavelli believed that a ruler's reputation must be crafted with intention. Every event becomes a brushstroke, every outcome a piece of the story others whisper about. When someone disrespects you and later suffers a downfall that seems unrelated, that story becomes part of your legend. People begin to believe that the universe itself punishes those who undermine you. And when people believe that, you no longer need to enforce consequences. Fear does it for you. There is a psychological brilliance in turning one person's downfall into a public lesson. Humans learn deeply from observing the pain of others. They do not need to experience it themselves. They only need to witness it. When they see that the one who disrespected you eventually lost status, influence, or support, their mind makes a connection. This is what happens to those who challenge him. And even if the conclusion is irrational, the fear it produces is real. That fear becomes a silent throne you sit on, a throne built not from demands but from observation. In politics, in business, in social life, in personal relationships, the Machiavellian principle is the same. Your power is measured not by how you treat your allies, but by how the world sees the consequences faced by those who oppose you. If challenges go unanswered, you look weak. If you respond emotionally, you look insecure. But if consequences unfold naturally and quietly, your authority grows deeper, stronger, and more unshakable. And here is the final truth Machiavelli understood better than anyone. You do not need to destroy the offender completely. You only need to make their fall visible enough that others understand the message. They do not need to fear suffering, only to fear the possibility of it. Because fear, once planted, grows faster than loyalty and lasts longer than admiration. It becomes a force people internalize, a warning they carry into every interaction with you. And as long as that warning echoes in their mind, your power remains protected, not by dominance, but by perception.